Welcome everyone. Again, we do live Q&A every Tuesday. Always welcome to submit your questions in the comments. We'll go to them as I see them come up. Other housekeeping, if you're watching in the replay, you can always put your questions in. We'll try and get to them in next week's video or Q&A. And we'll keep going from there. Always appreciate everyone's feedback and everything. Trying to go in. I didn't see any previous submitted questions to our story. So we'll kind of review in a question that comes up pretty frequently because there's always some new article or whatever that comes out in there. And it's always, people are always asking, what's the best diet? What's, whether it be high carb, low fat, high fat, keto, vegan, intermittent fasting. There's a slew of them out there. The challenge that people need to realize is that the reason why there's so many popular diets is because most of them do work for certain people. Everyone's a little bit different. Everyone's physiology responds a little bit different. Psychology plays a role into there too, as far as feedback loops, working against dopamine triggers when it comes to certain foods. So there's no one diet that supersedes them all. Biggest thing is finding a plan and way that works for you, that allows a couple things: that you can keep your portions and calories in control to either maintain your current body weight or get you to your ideal body weight. It is something that's sustainable for you, that has a primary focus on proteins, vegetables, and then other whole food ingredients. So you want to try and shy away from heavily processed foods, primarily because those are going to get the biggest dopamine trigger responses, that kind of get you back on that hooked loop for looking for more of the same thing. They're very calorically dense, so it makes it harder to keep your total calorie intake under control. As far as what time of day, what macro balance and things, it's going to depend upon you, your physiology, your schedule, your daily needs and demands, and then what is reasonable for you to sustain without feeling deprived, lethargic, hungry on a constant basis. It's okay to get a little hungry every so often because we do kind of want that. It shows that our metabolism is firing and working, but you shouldn't be, constantly starving or constantly feeling famished, especially to the point where you're, kind of fatigued. We start getting brain fog because there's just not enough fuel in the tank, so to speak, to stay sharp and stay alert with what you need for day-to-day tasks, depending upon your schedule. For example, I have pretty long days here at the gym. 10 is typically a short day. So intermittent fasting is not the easiest thing to implement, just because of how long I need some sort of energy flow throughout the day. Otherwise, I've noticed that I end up hitting, I can't focus on high brain level tasks because there's just not enough energy in my system for me to do that, keep up with clients, come back, do another task, go out, hit another client on the floor, come back and do another task, especially, at different points throughout the day. However, there have been other times where I didn't have as long a days and I could, keep the meals more condensed into a tighter time frame. That being said, the main factor with something like intermittent fasting is by eliminating how much time you have to consume calories, it is inherently just making it easier to control your caloric intake, um, is, which is really what it comes down to with any sort of diet that's promoted or marketed out there, is that you're eliminating enough other foods that allows you to keep your calories in a more ideal level that, again, you're either maintaining or going towards your ideal weight. um, if you look at just about any um, big promoted diet meal plan or approach, and just to kind of give an example of two completely opposites, we've got carnivore diet on one spectrum, vegan diet on the other spectrum. If you look at in their purity forms of both of these diets, the main focus is the elimination of processed foods and eating whole food ingredients. Now, what gets people in trouble is when they start trying to get vegan this or keto that, to where now we're adding in heavily processed foods just to try and satisfy what this diet or that diet doesn't necessarily allow you to have on a regular basis. And you end up completely undoing the whole point of what those diets were meant to be in their purity, which is elimination of processed foods, whole food ingredients only. And when I say whole food ingredients, I mean that, like, there's really no change from where it's gotten from the field to where it finally ends up on your plate. There's little to no change in the structure of that food, other than maybe some cutting, prepping, and cooking. Other than that, like, oh, this came from this plant, or this came from this animal, depending on which end of those diet spectrums that you're looking at is. And that's the reason why, if you really get down to the core of it, keeping a focus on protein of some form. Again, I don't care if it's vegan or if it's from an animal. Protein's going to help you with your satiety. It's going to help you with maintaining, if not building, your lean muscle tissue, which will help you from a metabolic standpoint. And then we look at your vegetables next. Vegetables we go to for fiber. It adds volume to your meals with very little caloric add-on with it. The higher fiber foods require more chewing. And that chewing has shown, the more that you have to chew in a meal, the more it stimulates a feeling of fullness or satiety longer after that meal. Versus a lot of kind of easy to chew carbohydrates, and especially if they've been processed to get to your plate, there's not a whole lot of work with the jaw, so it's not stimulating a lot of that feedback of hey, we had to work a lot, we actually consumed a lot type deal there. So that's the main two reasons why we look at those two first. Then you can look at your carbohydrate source if you need more on the plate, so to speak. But still just kind of be mindful of that portion control, where are your calories at, and work it from there. But just some things to kind of think about and consider. Like I said, the biggest thing that I've seen is that just because the diet worked for your friend doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you, unless you and your friend have very similar kind of food tendencies, as far as what you tend to go towards, what satisfies you, what energizes you. If you're not the same with that, that diet that your friend had a lot of success with may not work very well for you. And it's not because the diet's wrong, it's just it's not meant to work with your physiology. So that's the reason why with our clients we do a lot of what we call self-guided nutrition coaching, where we want you in the driver's seat of what you're picking, and then we're going to help coach you as far as how much of that you should have, when you should have it, what you should have it with, type deal, and kind of help keep you in balance that way. Because if you can find the foods that satisfy you, that you like to have, the more you're going to be able to stick with that type of approach long term, which is really what we want to get after. It is what type of food regularity keeps you consistent with eating a reasonable amount of calories and macronutrients and micronutrients for optimal body functioning while maintaining that optimal weight that we want to be at. So sometimes it takes experimenting around. If you find yourself needing help, that's what we're here for. I hope that answers anyone's questions in that realm. If you do have any more, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get back to them, or maybe we'll make it a topic for our next week's Q&A. Until then, hope everyone has a great week. Remember to stay consistent in your persistent pursuit of health.